Today's episode is brought to you by First Detachment. Are you looking for a supplement brand that truly understands hardworking athletes? Look no further than First Detachment. I have known Justin Harris for pretty close to 2 decades. And if there's anybody that I trust with nutritional and supplement needs, it's Justin Harris. While I love all of their products, I'd suggest that you check out the Field Rations and WTH first. Go to www.firstdetachment.com and use the code TableTalk10 to save 10% off each order. The link is in the description.
Today's episode is brought to you by elitefts.com. Founded in 1998 with the primary aim to live, learn, and pass on. Please help Elite FTS support this mission by smashing the like button, leaving a comment, sharing with a friend, and thinking of us for your training needs. If you can put it in a gym bag or load weights on it, Elite FTS has it.
What's going on? I'm Dave Tate. We are broadcasting from the middle of the Elite FTS weight room, where the underground still thrives and you're part of the crew. It's time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. All right, what's up, guys? We're back with another episode of Table Talk. Today, my guest is Jen Thompson. I got a lot of stats I can list through here. 4-time IPF Classic champion, 7-time IPF Bench champion. Let's just put it this way. You've won everything. There's like 77 world records. There's 115 meets. The most impressive thing about the 115 meets, unless it's not on here, there's only one DQ, right? Which is, that's amazing. That's kind of bother you too, that there's like only one out of the 115.
Yeah, that was when I was at the Arnold, and I tried to do a raw meet one day and a clip meet the second day. I couldn't do it.
All right, so that makes sense. The other things I want to point out is, in the sport of powerlifting, you've filled all roles there are to fill. The only role is you haven't started your own federation, but you're state chair. I've been state chair of North Carolina since 2004. Yep. For the IPF, you were on the international board. Is that
they had like different committees. I was like the youth committee, the entourage committee one year. They kept changing it around. Whatever the Olympics asked them to do, they would make a committee, and then they'd put me on it.
Yeah, so from lifter to, and this I think has a lot of merit. It has a lot of bearing, especially when we talk about the sport moving forward. Yeah. Because when there's the difference between a lifter and a lifter that's been a lifter and a judge, then the difference between a lifter that's been a lifter and a judge and a meet director, because then you see the lifters in a different way. Yeah, yeah. Because then when you're a state chair, there's a difference there, because you see everything. Yeah. Every step back, the more of the forest you can see. And you get back. Actually, it's kind of nice to get too far back. You don't see all the drama that happens with the little animals in the weeds, yeah, because you're too far back with that. Also, a mother of 2. I'm teenager and one in college. Yeah. Correct. I do have a question about that. Okay. I'm going to run to in a minute. And you've been married for 27 years, and you've been teaching since '97. Yeah. Math at the junior high and high school level. Yeah, I've changed it up a little bit this year. What is it this year? We're going science. Science. Yeah, last couple of years I did weight training and nutrition in the high school. I did math for like my first 20 years, and I started doing some elective work. Yes, and then, you're coaching them too. Yeah, I have a powerlifting club in my high school. So there's another facet of the whole powerlifting thing. Okay, so my question is, with the kids, mine are about the same age, right? When they're young, they ask why, like all the time. And then you answer. Then they get to a certain age where they know all the answers. Oh, yeah. Right? Have yours begun to move out of that age yet? Sort of. It's getting better, shall we say? Yeah. It was funny because when you say why, my oldest son, we used to tell him he gets 3 whys, and that was it. Because he would continue the why on until like you just wanted to pass out. Yeah, So we'd say you get 3 whys, that's it. And so we get to the 3rd why and we're like, sorry, you're out of whys. And then when he was in high school, for sure he would tell me what I needed to do. And I would look at him and I would say, do you know who I am? Like, do you know what I have done? And it didn't matter, but now that he's a year out in college,
it's definitely settled down some. And he's kind of come back. It's almost like they're in this weird teenage hormone like haze.
Yeah.
And then he's kind of getting out of that now, which has been nice.
I'm just trying to figure out, because I have 2 boys as well, like when their brains are going to become like adult brains.
Oh, not for a really long time, I don't think. Probably 30.
Okay. So, because everybody I ask with kids in the same age range, it's the same thing. Like, we're just waiting, maybe next year, and it's just not.
Yeah, especially with my older one, he loves powerlifting. He's done high school nationals. He's training for collegiate nationals right now. And then this is the first year where he really was like, okay, will you make me a plan and I'm going to stick to it. And he didn't question everything, like, because he'd tried so many things on his own that only got him so far because he knew better, right? Or he and his buddies, they were just kind of being gym bros and going in there and maxing out every single time. And eventually they figured out on their own. I think you have to on your own at some point because it gives you validity.
Yeah.
They figured out, okay, this got me so far, but I want to get farther. So finally now, as he's training for collegiate nationals, he has some very big aspirations. So we sat down, we made the program, we worked everything out for the week, and he's sticking to it and asking questions and reporting back and sending videos. That's the first time ever that he's really bought into our program.
Yeah. Have they always been interested in powerlifting?
My oldest one, yes, for sure. I mean, we've always had a home gym. We've never worked out at a commercial gym or whatever. So they've been in there since they were in diapers. So, I mean, it started off as just a jungle gym. We would work out. They would jump up and down on the bands, climb on the squat rack, whatever. Yeah. So they'd been in there since they were little. And then we started when they were 10, they wanted to start actually getting into it. So we just did like body weight stuff because I really feel like push-ups and pull-ups and that sort of thing is lost on our kids these days, body weight, strength. And so we did a lot of that. And then when they got to 14, we let them start powerlifting. My youngest one he's a senior this year, so he's not real young, but he does it because he knows it makes him good at baseball, and that's his true love.
Okay.
So he does it because he knows he makes it better, but he doesn't love it. He'll pick a competition once or twice a year because he knows he'll train harder if he has to perform at something. But he doesn't really have any aspirations to go to a national or any level like that.
With you being in the school system, and the gym classes obviously have changed substantially. I think I heard a podcast for you where it wasn't the president's physical fitness, it was like the Marine type of training that were. And I going way back to when I was in high school before you, there's the same thing. They were in there, and when my kids went through it was, I don't even want to say it was gym at all.
No.
So with what you were doing with yours, were you trying to fill the gap that was not in the school system?
Yeah. When I first stopped teaching math and started teaching PE, I asked for an all-girls class. So they gave it to me for a few years. And we were able to really focus on female health and not be embarrassed about it in front of a class of boys. But I really focused on teaching them weight training. We did all sorts of stuff. We did yoga. We did CrossFit. I really exposed them to a lot of the different athletics that are out there, hoping that one would resonate with them. But I think all of them build up female confidence and self-worth. I wanted to take it away from playing dodgeball.
Was it an elective?
No, they had to take it in 9th grade. It was required class.
And how receptive were they overall?
Good. They really enjoyed. I mean, it kind of cracks me up because when I talked to my mother, she wasn't even allowed to have PE when she was in school, know? And then they did, I think, split them up for a while because they didn't think females could handle what the males were doing. And I thought about it for a long time because I almost thought, am I stepping backwards by requiring this all-girls class? But I felt like if I separated them from the boys at that age, I could really focus it on them and create a community with them, which I think gets lost when you have, especially at that age, very active boisterous boys. A lot of times girls will get intimidated by that. And just, I've seen them I watch the other gym classes. Our gyms, we have a big gym, and then we have like a mezzanine that overlooks you can look at the top down to see what's going on. And I watch the other gym classes, and I watch the girls just sitting on the bleachers while the boys played their games, because they're very aggressive. They're in their face and they're enjoying themselves, and they just don't know how to insert themselves into that situation, or they're getting pushed out. So I wanted to create a class for them where they felt like they could try things, not be embarrassed, and had the opportunity, really.
Is that something you're still doing now?
No. I got in education, just it's ever changing and the needs are different. And so our weight training coach was gone and they needed one. So I was the logical person to put in there.
So how does that work then? Is that after school, or is it built in during the school?
During school. There's 3 weight training classes that kids can take as like a PE after 9th grade. In North Carolina, PE and health is required 9th grade. You all have to take it.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's optional. You don't take a PE class for the rest of high school if you don't want to. But we have weight training available for them.
Which is cool. Which is definitely cool. So 3 of the periods, that's what you're doing. Then the other 3 periods, it will be science. Is that right?
I was teaching nutrition. This year I actually dropped down to middle school. I left that position. I gave it to our baseball coach. And I basically laid out everything I had built. And I feel pretty confident that he's going to carry it on.
What was the reason for dropping down to middle school?
I needed a change. Some of it is, like, I love powerlifting, but I only love it so much. I have a real passion for environmental science. And although I love the weight training and I loved teaching the kids and getting them in proper form and putting them on these programs, at some point towards the end of the school year, I was kind of bored with it, honestly, because I had them running so well. Like it was a well-oiled machine. They were spotting, they were loading, they were pushing themselves. They honestly didn't need me that much. And I was tired of just spotting and loading kids all day. And so I just felt like, and then too, it was just a lot. Like, I'm not someone that'll go sit in a gym all day. I want to go in, I want to crush my workout, and I want to get out of there. And so it was too much of it, honestly, for me to really, and then with the powerlifting club too. I needed something different. I felt like I was getting complacent in what I was doing, and I wasn't challenging myself anymore. I didn't like that. So I put myself in an uncomfortable position. And so now I'm teaching middle school STEM classes.
All right. Well, it seems over the years that, because you've been competing since, what did I say here? Like 99 is what was on record.
That was my first
here,
one,
right?
yeah.
So, and over 100 meets as well. So the sport's grown, and we'll talk about that. It's grown a lot, actually, on a tremendous amount. Female side has grown, I don't even know how to even calculate that percentage, in the thousands of percents, where now people are, how do I want to say this? It takes up, for a lot of people, they let it take up more of their life than it should. Where when I was with Louis, he was really big on, wow, this is what you do. Don't make it your whole life. Now we ignored him. But for the most part, I think we all understood, what he meant by that. Where now it's really easy to become the online coach, to be around it 24/7 because of social media and all the other stuff. It's just bombarded with that. To where on the backside, on the negative side of that, you'll lose your own passion.
Kills your joy.
I believe so, especially if you're still actively competing, which was one of the pieces of advice I never agreed with Louis with at the time. But now that I'm older, I do, because I would be doing seminars and all these other things while I was competing. He's like, he was very adamant, like, don't do that, don't do that, and now I see what he meant by that. I still found a way to physically structure it so they didn't get in the way of any meets I was training for. But it became very cumbersome, and it became a lot like what you're talking about, to where you start dreading doing it. And then it always seemed to work back to, I don't want to go to the gym. So
I'm very conscious of that. I know my limits, and at first it seemed like a really great idea to do this, and I was the natural choice to go into that role just because of all my accomplishments and stuff. Although I have no PE background in my training, I'm a math and science teacher, but in education, a lot of times they don't care. They just need somebody in there. But I did find and I've always tried to very much balance. I know that I'm not, everyone always said why don't you start your own gym? As soon as I start making this my job and my income is when my performance will probably go down, but I'll stop enjoying it. So I've always been very conscious about that. I've never wanted to own a gym. I tried some online training during COVID just to try it. I didn't like it. I love my powerlifting club at school. It's a few times a week, and I just like kids. And then I'll do some seminars here and there because I honestly just enjoy meeting people. I enjoy travel. And I enjoy those in-person aha moments, like when you can just do something that makes somebody's day or fix something they've been trying to fix for months and can't figure out how. I love that feeling, but I have to be careful not to do too many because it's easy to get caught up in come here, do this, do that. We did this Iron Sisters camp for a few years where it was myself, Kim Walford, Bonica Brown, and Frances Manius out of Canada. And we were doing an all-women's seminar all weekend. It was like a girls' weekend. We were doing it every other month, and it got to where it was just too much. I was sacrificing too much time with my family, with my training, although I loved it. And I still have people that come back and say, I saw you this, and this was great, and this meant so much to me. I was sacrificing myself to do that. And I had to say, I think we've done what we can do, and I need to step back.
It's different, being somebody that's done the same type of things, and I still do clinics now. A weekend clinic, even with just 4 or 5 people, I can't train during that time. It's like every rep they do, I do, but then I'm just freaking exhausted from it. Then it's like 2 months.
Right.
Then I'll do another one, but I for the same reasons that you're talking about, you can fix things and see things that they can't see just from the experience. And then when they get it, or even just talking to them about training, because there's a lot of different methodologies and so forth, but you can fill in gaps in their training and they finally get it.
Yeah.
And I haven't, being online for 25 years or whatever it is, I haven't found that in an online environment in any way.
I don't know that it's really possible. When I was doing I tried the online during COVID, because gyms were closed and everything was shut down. I thought, well, if I'm ever going to try this is a great time. So I took on 10 athletes and I said I'd do it for a year. And I was training this one guy, and, I was trying to overdo it because I wanted to kick it out of the park. I wanted to be like the best one ever. That's the competitor in me, So I was watching videos every week. I was, doing their programs every week with constant communication. And this one guy was making amazing progress. And it got to where things opened up and he was able to do a meet. And he bombed out on the bench because his butt came this far off the bench every time. I couldn't see that in his videos.
Good point, yeah.
And so that, I was like, that really sucks. It was like, it just crushed me, especially in the bench press of all the lifts, I'm like, he did the worst in my best one. And it just, that to me was like, it's just not the same.
Well, what that brought up in my mind as you just said that is, if I was doing that same thing, I don't know if I'd ever even think to ask them, how high is your bench? Because the general assumption would be that they have a competition high bench where they may not. That could be part of the problem too. And
his shorts hung down just enough that I couldn't see that it was off.
Yeah.
It was a fraction, half an inch, but they caught it in competition.
Of course. Yeah.
So that really bummed me out about it.
There's a lot of downsides to the online training. There's no doubt about it. There's some good there, but there's definitely good sides, because I think a large part of how the sport has grown over the years is because of the accessibility.
Absolutely.
And so forth.
Yeah, I did have this one woman. She was a master's lifter, and once we got her on my program and we were doing it, she went to a meet, and I think increased her total by like 80 pounds. She had put in like 4 meets before that. And I was just so stoked for her. I was like, this is unbelievable. And she messaged me and she goes, I really thought I would have got stronger working with you. And I was like, I'm done. Like, I'm so over this. Yeah. Out of here.
Yeah, I don't know what to think about that one. That is kind of fucked up, though, if you think about it, because at a certain level, it's hard just to get back to where you were. Yeah. That's 90% of the challenge. Yeah. And then just put 5 more pounds on each lift.
She was master's lifter. I mean, she wasn't a new lifter.
Well, anyhow. Okay, so we'll
But
pivot.
It's good for some, I think, especially if you live in a place where you don't have access to a coach. Yes. You know, I think an in-person coach is invaluable. If someone's there all the time seeing what you're doing, it's hard to replace that. But if you don't have that available, how wonderful is it that you have all these other resources?
There's so many pros and cons with both sides, because with the in-person, you know, I was fortunate enough to have people that were powerlifters from the time I was 12 help. And that's great. But the negative of that is there was a lot of things I didn't have to figure out on my own, which is not so great, but over a period of years. So there's always pros and cons to each side of the whole thing. When you started competing, that was a time where it was in Michigan, right? So was that the ADFPA or was it already the USAPL?
It just switched over to USA Powerlifting. I honestly didn't know anything about powerlifting. I'd been training with my husband and his friends for a few years in our basement gym, and I just dug it. You know, I was a runner before that. I didn't really like running, but I liked the competition of it all. So I started training, and I didn't know, like, knew I was getting strong because I could tell I was catching up to some of the guys that were lifting with us. But like at the time, it was either bodybuilding or it was fitness. You know, fitness was huge then, and I didn't feel like I fit into either one of those. And then we just walked on a powerlifting competition in Venice Beach, California one day. And I was like, this I can do. Like, this is for me. And so, you know, back then you would look in the back of USA Powerlifting magazine and see which events were coming up. Yeah. And I was looking at all the different ones, and the one that made sense was USA Powerlifting, not one with a bunch of initials. Like, it just like, oh, well, this seems like this is the United States of America. Yeah. This is powerlifting. I'll choose that one.
There weren't a lot either. You know, so I would red circle, you know, the meets that were just in Ohio or Michigan, like within driving range.
Right.
And there'd be like 3 in a quarter. You know, like in fall, there's 3. Like, okay, where would it be? And so there was that as well. And, but when you did that first meet where I'm going back to, was there even enough women to have a flight?
Oh, no. I think there was two, maybe 3 of us. That was it. There really wasn't a whole lot of people there in general. It was in like a high school gym, I think.
Okay, so old school stuff.
Yeah, it was a really old school gym. And I mean, I learned how to deadlift like 5 days prior. Like it was like, I always loved the bench. I was good at it, but I had to practice the pause because I wasn't used to doing that. I nearly bombed out. I squatted 185 pounds. I was high the first one. The second one, I fell into the swatter behind me because I tried to go so deep I lost my balance. And then the third one, I think they just gave me because they was the first meet, and it was a very like kind of grassroots kind of situation. And then I came out and benched 215 after that, you know. And everyone was like, what? And then people were walking around, you know, with their arms sticking out like mummies. And I'm like, what are they doing? Why are they walking like that? Like, what is going on? I met a coach, I don't know if you know who he is, CJ Batten. He was there, and he came up and gave me the lowdown and just really kind of helped set me straight on this path. Okay.
So then that has to thrust you into single ply because there's really not a whole lot going on.
No.
Which is, looking through your open powerlifting stats, it was interesting to me that your raw bench is higher than your single ply bench. And then listening to a few podcasts, it became really clear as to why that is. It's harder for lean people to use the bench shirts because it's very hard. And back then it was a single ply. It was still single ply because it was USAPL, but they weren't what they were now.
Not even close.
So the armpit hell.
It was horrible. I never, part of the reason I was never good in it is because I just didn't like it. I didn't enjoy being in it. I didn't like practicing in it. So I would, put it on a few times before an event and go. I never really got a ton out of it, but some of it was my own fault. It sucked.
Yeah. Well, at that point though, because I don't think it was probably mid 2000s before people started to get big carryovers.
Yeah. We had the little polyester, I don't know whether EDHPA or I don't remember what all the initials were, but it was just a glorified polyester shirt. And then they started really amping them up and then having the flexible back and, then it really went.
So I remember because there was a lot of meets that I lifted in that it wasn't worth the 10 extra pounds. But just get this damn thing off. It's not worth the 10 extra pounds. Kind of sucks because now those I wonder, how many of those benches throughout the years were raw that aren't listed as raw now because people just said, screw, I don't want to wear the bench shirt. Yeah. Right? Because there's no way to know one way or another. And then I remember J.M. Blakely had an article he wrote somewhere mid 2000s where he wrote about how he was getting 40 pounds out of his bench shirt. And I'm like, are you kidding? Like 40 pounds?
40
like
pounds.
What the hell? Like 40 pounds? I'm getting like 5. Like this is terrible.
Yeah.
And then, it evolved from that point. But I like yourself, a lot of the times I just couldn't figure out like if somebody did get something out of it. Now I know why, but back then I couldn't figure out why they were getting more out. And
it was frustrating as hell.
It was. Now the way Louis was at the time, and he didn't evolve later in the years, is we only wore the stuff at a meet. So a lot of the criticisms on Westside back then is it was all made for gear training. And it's like, well, we only trained in briefs. We went to the meet, put the shirt on for the first time, put the squat suit on for the first time. Over a period of time, that was stupid, because now we're giving up pounds because of that. But that's how it was. You didn't have to wear the squat suit all the time. Like maybe the last 2 sessions you put your straps up.
We would do some singles in it, like maybe 3 times before the event, just to get the feel, get the groove, get the form down, just so you were prepared for that. I mean, it's a whole different kind of lifting. Yeah. And so it's like kind of like the first day you put it on, it sucks so bad, but then the second day it's not so bad, and then you just get kind of used to the suck and it's not so bad.
Yeah. Now when you're in there, because it's the timelines, I know, but I don't know where they fell. The single ply in the USAPL / IPF at the time. Now it's different, but single ply was way more popular than raw.
Oh, there was no raw.
Yeah, by a lot. And then even when raw started, and I don't know exactly when that falls, like 2012 maybe?
I think it was 2010. They kind of did like a practice, like let's try this and see how it goes.
So you jumped straight into it,
I didn't start till 2012.
Okay.
Like they had one, I don't remember why I didn't do it. I don't know if it just didn't fit well with my competition schedule or I can't even remember why. But I didn't do the first one. But I knew, we told them, because, I was a state chair at the time. I told them, I said, and Donovan, my husband, was like, this is going to be huge. You guys need to be ready for it. And they were kind of like, whatever. Yeah. And they ended up, I think they were lifting like into midnights each day because it was just overwhelming amount of people that were like, yeah, let's go.
Yeah. When did it flip? Was it to where raw became more popular than the single ply?
I think
in the USAPL.
I think right when they had their
first right away.
And I think also when CrossFit started to get popular, and especially on the women's side, I think CrossFit really helped fuel that growth because, there's still at the time the worry that if you lifted weights as a woman, you would immediately look like a man. You would just pop all these muscles and start talking with a deep voice. And so I think a lot of women got into CrossFit because it seemed more feminine way to go. But then they were doing some of the powerlifting lifts in CrossFit, and then they're like, this is way better than CrossFit. So then they started moving over into powerlifting. But I think also, I almost think some of it is at the time the economy was bad. And so I think the ability just to come lift and not have to purchase all that equipment also fueled it.
Oh, that's a big part.
Yeah.
It's I would say they're equal.
Yeah.
Because I call it the cost of entry, because it's not just the meet entry fee, which back then was maybe $60.
Yeah, I was saying, I think in North Carolina back then they were like 55 for full powerlifting, I think 45 for bench.
Yeah, it didn't hit the $100 range yet, for sure. But the equipment, getting back there, you might be looking at 50 for briefs, then the suit might be 100, so maybe 150. Now I know the multiply better, because I was selling metal at the time. So just the briefs were $140, $150.
Yeah.
A suit was $275. The deadlift.
Yeah.
So you got $1,000.
Ours weren't quite that expensive, but it was up there. Like a good bench shirt was in the upper hundreds. Squat suits also, and yeah. I mean, you were probably looking at a good $400 purchase for just this.
Easy.
And then if you add the wraps and everything else, and then with that, it only lasts so long, and then you need new.
That was a single ply, yeah.
It loses its oomph, and then you need to, get new. So then you're having to repurchase that. So it ain't cheap.
No, that's the...
and that was years ago.
That's the business side of the sport that doesn't get discussed a whole lot. Is I bring in metal gear, and there was Titan, there's Inzer, France. Maybe Crane had a little bit. So there's
Crane, yeah.
But pretty much Titan and Inzer. And I remember when I brought in this, I don't know if I've told this on the podcast before, the first thing we brought in were the briefs. And I'm a retailer, right? So I still have to pay for them. People don't, with business, sometimes they don't, I think I get them for free. And, but I remember that by the time we would pay shipping, customs, duty, and then the product, I'd have to sell the briefs for $160, and briefs at the time were like $60.
Wow.
So I'm like, if I do this, one of two things are going to happen. Either everybody's going to increase their rates because they can, or I'm going to lose my ass.
Yeah, right.
On this, and everybody did. But in the multiply sector, and this took me a while to figure this game out, they don't have to buy all the time. Dave Hoff still uses the same squat suit that he used 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But in single ply, I was not able to make any traction there. And it was IPF approved, but there was just no way in hell, because the powers that be, competitive forces, corruption, whatever you want to say it is, didn't want it. And then I started thinking, oh, wait a minute, when I competed, my training suit or my meet suit became my next training suit. And then every meet, so 4 meets a year, you're like, that's way more expensive than the multiply.
Oh, yeah.
Because the argument, or not the argument, the debate back then was, do single ply because it's not as expensive. And I'm like, you guys don't get this. Right. You don't get it at all. There's a big thing going on here. So now you take that with the economy, like you're saying, and this influx coming in. If they just want to tip their toes in the water, they're not going to put out $1,000. Right. It's $60. Do the meet. Yep. And the demands
explode.
I don't believe any of the federations, because if you think back, there was a lot of geared lifters ragging on the raw lifters online. Bad, right? So this is the other thing I like to put out there. Like any of the shit that the geared lifters take now, you know what? You probably deserve it. Because what's coming back to you is nothing compared to the first group of raw that started to come up through. Yeah. All the conversations of you're scared to lift heavy weight, all this other kind of stuff that kind of went around with that. But I don't think any of the federations were ready. No. Not at all.
And I think they were hesitant about embracing it also, because I think some of their business relationships and sponsors and stuff, until they could find something to replace that, they were very hesitant. But I mean, when the people talk, you can't not listen,
Yeah. That's the one thing I wish people understood more about the sport, is when this happened, this was not in the best interest of any federation governing body at all. No. But the lifters ended up making the final decision.
It was demanding it.
And that's happened several times in several different cases, but the lifters that get caught up in the drama today don't realize they actually dictate where the sport goes. And I wish they would know their history a little bit more.
Right. It's really kind of lost. I feel like there's just a few of us still around that,
Yeah.
you know, can remember those days or even speak to them. Now there's just not, it's just not really available. Or I don't even know that they care to even hear about it, honestly.
They don't, but it's, I want to say this tentatively. When there's just a few major businesses involved, and then only a few major federations, if you count like WPC, IPF, there's partnerships. Let's just put it that way. There's partnerships.
Yeah.
And they were at risk, as you said, in a really, really big way.
Yeah.
That I'm still impressed that it actually broke through like it did.
Right. Well, I think you had some other companies step in.
Yeah.
You know, they realized that they were still going to be able to function, and they had, you know, A7, SBD, Rogue, all those.
But there was a gap,
filling
though.
Those spots. Well, I was lucky that they saw that there was potential in this. Those companies.
Yeah. Oh, most definitely. But before that, there was still this little bit of a gap with, so anyhow, getting back to your lifting with that. So you're the minority in the meets. And that was the same way if it was the APF or any of the other meets. It was just a handful of women that were in there. And then it became more and more and more. Then right around the time that you were 2010, 2012, it became...
We had already, even before it hit, we had started doing like openers raw and then putting on the suits and the shirts. One, because the equipment was getting way more complicated and you wanted to make sure you got that first one in. But secondly, it was a way to show off how strong you really are compared to your equipment. So it was already starting to happen a little bit. They would actually let us do one raw and count it in a raw as a raw record, and then to do two equipped and count towards
that's cool. Yeah.
In the beginning. And then it got too complicated after a while, but we could already start seeing it coming. I was already in my own mind done with it, with the equipment. I was going to just take it off anyway, just because lifting all that extra weight on your frame, it takes a toll.
Yeah.
You know, your joints start to hurt. And the equipment was getting so much more advanced to lift more weight on this frame. And I was tired of not feeling well. So I had already made the decision, like, I don't even care if I'm the only raw lifter in there. I'm not enjoying it anymore. So
the only big difference for you, though, would have been the squat, though, right? Because the deadlift suit's not going to help a whole lot.
I got like 0 out of that. Looking back, I almost think it was like a negative. But yeah, the squat, I got quite a bit of the squat and the reps.
Yeah.
That was hugely helpful.
So it's sleeves now. So it's when you went raw, it's raw sleeves. So it's not. What is the USAPL with? Do they have wraps?
Well, they have all these, like now that we're not with the IPF anymore, with all these categories. Like there's a squat with wraps category. So you can be raw with wraps now. Okay. Or you can be raw with neoprene knee sleeves. There's like, there's like an adaptation category. There's a category for anybody. A Gen X category, Gender X category, whatever.
Years ago, I took, I don't know what federation it was, but we took an entry form and figured out how many potential first place winners there could be.
Oh, so many. The awards take forever.
It was like 40,000. It was ridiculous because you have police, fire, your masters, all these, and it's just like, oh my God. So if you're this, and this, and I guess it makes it easier for the meet director because you just.
Well, thank goodness for Lifting Cast, because now you have like software that'll just figure that stuff out, for you. And I like the idea that they're trying to be all inclusive to everyone. Really, USA Powerlifting, and I'm sure other organizations, but the idea is you don't want to not let somebody come lift for certain reasons, so you want to be all inclusive, but at the same time, it's making it really messy, and you're really diluting the competing that's going on.
I think so, but if you cast a wide net, but then you have the right incentives for the strongest lifters, if it's money or
for sure.
Or title, whatever it's going to be.
Pro card.
There's got to be a carrot. Yeah. So whatever the carrot is, it should pull most into that.
There's definitely like the open category, is like the main one, the open raw. That's where everyone's going to go that, are elite status or whatever, going for money and things like that. But then there's just, trickling down, there's categories for everybody.
When did you decide to start running your own meets?
Well, in 2004, took over the state chair. There was a state chair before me that wasn't running events in accordance to USA Powerlifting guides. So the president came up to me in the airport and he said, I need you to take this. And I said, okay. I had no idea. So when I took over, we had 35 members in North Carolina and 1 referee. 35 members? 35. Okay. And I was like, okay, well, I guess we're going to need to start having meets, So I put on my first one, and it's no easy task. No. It was a big learning curve, those first few that we did. And now I feel like we are known for putting on really good, well-run, high-end events. But, I mean, that's not my job area at all. I don't know anything about marketing and business. I'm a teacher, so it was way out of my comfort zone. But my love for my sport made me want to do it. And I wanted to get more people in it, and I wanted to see us grow as a state. So thankfully, my husband, Donovan, he jumped in it with me. And basically, like, our first meet, we had like all ER doctors spotting and loading, because it was all our friends there were our spotters and loaders. And we were all I just called on my community. I'm like, you got to help me do this. And then it just rolled from there. Did it change how you saw the sport after that? 100%. I became a referee, I think, just like the year before. I was really pissed about some of the calls I was getting. I was just getting into the sport, and I felt like some of the more veteran lifters were getting nicer calls than I was. And it pissed me off. And then I said, I can't really get pissed off if I'm not sitting in the chair doing it myself. So I became a state referee, and it's a whole different perspective when you're the one sitting in there having to make that call. And then, I ended up going to international, because at the international events, you have to have a referee to get the 6th placing. So I did that. So that was really, enlightening. And it's a tough job to do. You don't, especially if it's people lifting, you don't want to turn down their lift,
it's tough.
But you got to. And then just the organization of it all was a huge learning curve, and the running. And back then, we didn't have lifting casts. We had Next Lifter. Was it Next Lifter or something? I don't remember. Or it was like Excel a spreadsheet. Yeah. It was a spreadsheet, and so, that wasn't easy to even learn there. And then, things went wrong, but we did our best.
I put on a few meets and decided I'm never going to do that again. The first one, we were using index cards, and that's just, but for me, it was, two things happened. Is I saw lifters in a different way and I was still one. Yeah. Right. So then it's kind of like a mind fuck too. Like, am I this big of a dickhead? It's like, you're not really sure how that plays. And then my friends and family who were helping are now, I'm showing them the sport that I've been involved in my whole entire life and love so much. And then they're like, these people suck. And I'm like, well, you got to understand, this is the culmination of 16 weeks of training or whatever. Yeah. This isn't the best light to judge them in, but it was enough for me to say, I'm not doing this thing. Well, I think for us, like, just the fact that we were having them, they were so thankful that we were actually holding events and building this community. So we really got a lot of just positive feedback. And of course, there's the couple of people that are upset about something went or call or whatever. But I think the majority was extremely positive. I mean, I think our, now powerlifting's growing so much, but I think our first meet had like 25 lifters in it. And then, now it's crazy. We can't hold enough events. And I honestly don't like holding them. I would step away if I could, but the control person in me worries that it's not going to run well without me. And so ultimately, I have a co-chair now, Nick Hammer. He's wonderful, and I keep thinking I'm going to let him take this over, but still part of me wants to be in it. So I don't have to do as much as I used to, which is really nice. He does the majority of the stuff. And then whatever he can't do, I kind of pick up and take care of. But
every meet, I'm like, that's the last one. I'm not doing this again.
Yeah.
And then the next one comes, and they're like, well, we need help with this. All right. With
the recent drama that transpired with the USAPL and the IPF, which we don't need to go into that because that's not where I'm taking this question. There's a lot of drama there. Then you're at a higher level to see what's really going on compared to what people are saying is going on and all this other stuff. But that's not the first time that there's been drama in the sport. Sure. It's always been there, right? It's just become a little bit more visible because of social media,
and people know about it.
And it gets blown out of proportion in some areas with some things than it is in others. You're still a competitor and have been a competitor throughout all of this. Yeah. So how do you not let that affect your training and your competing and what you do on the platform? Not just that situation, but there's always something.
Yeah. I feel like I lifted in the golden era when I won all my world titles. Things were pretty good. We were actively trying to keep the sport clean as much as we could. People were, there was always some drama here or there, but overall I felt like I was getting a fair shot at all my competitions. And then with winning so many titles comes comfort. Like I can walk in an event and if I don't win, it's okay. Like I've got so much behind me. I take huge risks in my attempt selection and which meets I do and how I do it. And it's, for me, like these events are so magnificent compared to the ones we had 20 years ago. Like we're treated as true athletes. People are watching us. You go to the Arnold or you go to the Olympia and things like that. Like you feel like people recognize you, they see you, and you're somebody. And I am just so enjoying that part of where we're at that I just don't let the other stuff bother me. I've always been very good at compartmentalizing things in my head. In the beginning, I wasn't. When I first started training, competing, it was a mental wreck. But when you do it long enough, you figure out how to make that work. And so for me, like, I just don't let things bother me. I just don't. Like, that sucks. Okay, move on.
Okay, so it's what I'm taking from your answer is you're focusing on the positive changes that you've seen because you've seen where it's come from. Right. Okay, where what I'm talking about, and I'm sure you get this because you have your own little lifting world, is probably every week or every other week, hey, did you hear so-and-so or did you see so-and-so? And it could be something that's just, if I hear it, it's this, you probably have the same reaction, like, whatever, no, I didn't hear, I don't care.
I don't immerse myself in that at all.
So when that comes to you, what do you tell that person that's trying to bring that to your attention, that to focus on the big picture?
Yeah. Like, for me, it's all about pushing myself harder, being better than I was, being kind to the people around me, surrounding myself with positivity. I don't hear about half that stuff because I don't pay attention to it. I don't need that. To me, that's just negative. That's going to bring me down. That's not going to affect me in a positive way whatsoever. So I don't even give that stuff the time of day. Like, I don't. It is what it is. You guys can, spend time being upset and hash that shit out. I don't care.
Yeah. Well,
to me, it's all about the lifting. I just want to go lift.
That's kind of what I wanted you to say is, the couple takeaways there is if you know the history, you'll know that it's not that big of a deal. No. It's advanced.
There's ups and there's downs, and the way it is it's never going to stay the way it is right now. Yeah. It's an ever-changing environment. So whoever's at the top now, or whoever's this, or whoever's dominating this, or whatever equipment you think you need right now, or nutrition, whatever, it's all changing.
Yes.
So you're just always trying to improve yourself and do better and be inventive, be flexible, be willing to look at these changes and decide if they're good for you or not. And then you move on.
So with that in mind, how has your training changed over the years?
A lot. So well, core principles, I think, have stayed.
Yes.
I feel like I kinship with you a little bit because a lot of our training is was evolved out of Westside.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the conjugate, a lot of our training principles and how we approach training. I kind of think about it as like in teaching, like they're always giving us these new programs that we got to teach to the kids because it's going to make them understand everything like amazingly better. And in the end, what we used to do worked and it still works. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I see that a lot with training and my career. And so there's certain core principles that just work in training. And so we've kept those. And then we're always really just sort of messing around with our rep scheme, different variations of things, rest days, adding this in, adding that out. We're just always evolving. And also like our life is different now than it was then. So you have to adapt your training to as your life changes. You know, when we first started, we didn't have kids. Then we had kids. We really had to change it to what was conducive to our time that we had then. Now our kids are on their way out. We have more time, you know, so, but we're traveling more. So, you know, everyone always wants this like magic. This is going to make you so strong, do this. But in reality, you have to figure out what's going to make you strong in the way you live your life. So, and that's an ever-changing thing also. Mm-hmm. So it's just, I mean, Donovan just printed out, we always print out our workouts and stick them on the cork board, and we're on version 31.
From what I can understand is your main movements are physically structured in a linear way. Yep. So longer periods of time, like 10, 12 weeks. And then the secondary movements are structured more, I guess, in a conjugated period of way. So you'll push it in a certain rep scheme until you can't get better at it, then you change the exercise.
Or we'll drop back. I mean, it's like an auto-regulation kind of thing. You have to get when you've been training this long, you're pretty in tune with your body. And you know when to push and when to back off a little bit. So we got that. We were taking these coaches classes for, you know, you had to be certified as a coach with USA Powerlifting, and they were having all these, you had to learn all the titles of everything, linear progression and cyclical and all this sort of stuff. So we came up like with a name for ours, and we decided it was the CLUE method. It was a secular linear undulating method with some conjugate in there.
So the undulate,
really,
I get it.
It's just a mass of it we put together, and we picked out all the parts we like.
Yeah, no, I get it. Where with the undulating, it's dropping. It's either dropping down to bring the speed back, right? Yeah. Or dropping out and replacing with something else through that. Yeah. Now the main movement, though, it doesn't do that as much.
Well, no, I mean you have to squat, bench, deadlift. Yeah. You know, so that can't change. But I think
that's where you can throw conjugate in there, right? You know, so you could actually add conjugate into your sequence of titles. Yeah. Because that.
CC.
Yeah. So it's
C squared.
C squared. C squared. That fits the math thing a little bit better.
Well, I think too. Like I've had a major hip injury, and I tore my obturator muscle pretty badly at the Arnold one year, and that's taken me a while to fix that. And so through that, even though I have to squat, I did a lot of like belt squats, box squats, you know, the Duffalo bar, just not actually using the squat bar, because that's what hurt the most, was the straight barbell. So I would do a little bit with that because I needed it, but I supplemented it with a lot of other things that kept my squat up.
Yeah.
So you didn't have to like massively squat for all these sets and reps. You can fill it in with other things that'll still help you get there.
As you've gotten older, have you found that those accessories have to go up or down? Volume-wise.
Volume-wise? Yeah. I think it's almost the same, honestly. I've always trained pretty much balls to the walls. Like I just train my ass off. I love it. And I think because I'm used to training that hard, I don't know if it's like, you know, you keep running a mile over and over, you're just used to it, you know? So that really hasn't changed a whole lot. More of what's changed is like our rep scheme of things. So like, I don't do a whole lot of heavy singles anymore. I do a lot more doubles and triples because it's just nicer on my body.
How much difference is that triple, say if it's a deadlift, if it's a 5, and then what you pull the meet, what % difference is that from training to the meet?
I don't know what the % is, but it's huge. But deadlifts is the one thing I've never maxed out in the gym.
Yeah.
Because I I can't come close to what I can pull off the platform as in the gym.
So what are the numbers? So say your triple in the gym is.
So I think the biggest triple I did was 425.
Okay, then in competition 460. Okay, but the accessories and all those are training the same muscles that actually deadlift, right? So that kind of makes some sense there. What did you do to your hip? What was the surgery that you had there?
So I'm a sumo deadlifter. For a long time, I was very wide. And so basically what I did was I had like a calcification in my hip, and it basically wore away a groove in my femur and then was starting to shred the labrum tendon. So I had to go, they went in laparoscopically, and they had to clean out the hip joint, shave down the bone, and then they wrapped my labrum tendon in like the thickest suture they could to strengthen that.
And how long ago was that?
That was, I think, 2017, I think, is when I had the surgery.
Yeah, so that's after giving birth.
Oh, yeah.
But way after.
But
way
after.
So it's not because the pelvic changed because of that.
Yeah, I just think it was, I don't have a lot of powerlifting injuries. I've had a lot of injuries in my life, but most of them were like water sports and like other fun stuff I like to do.
Funny how that works. Right?
But that was probably I've really only had two, I think. It was that one, and then it was the obturator tear, were really my only two powerlifting injuries, and they happened later in life. The obturator tear was my fault. I was getting to where like the girls were catching up to me. And I was in 2000, maybe 18 or 19, I can't remember. And I had won 9 raw titles, powerlifting, back to back. And I tied and lost on body weight. And I felt like something wasn't right before, but I didn't want to back out because I didn't want to lose. And I had this, and I wanted 10. And so even though I knew I wasn't 100%, I was trying to work around it. You know, like when something's not feeling right, you just try to work around it or push through it. And so then I was training for the Arnold. So I was like, I am going to beat her at this Arnold. And so I was lifting, and I knew it was getting worse. The whole time I knew it was going worse. And I was like, we have this like grit through the pain, just take it and go, hardcore stuff, and it was getting horrible, but I still went to the Arnold. And on the third, I was doing my third squat, and I was coming out of the hole, and the spotters grabbed it early. So they granted me a fourth. And so on the fourth one, I got to the hole, and I felt something pop, and I was done. They had to carry me off. It was a grade 3 tear. And, so I had to try to come back from that. And then when I was coming back from that, I broke my hip because of all the pressure. So I had some rough years, but...
Same hip?
Same hip. But it was just stupid. Like, it was just me. I could have completely avoided that if I would have put my ego aside and just stepped back and knew something was wrong and fixed it. But, like, the competitor in me was like, no, go. You've got to win. You've got to do this. And I made a dumb decision.
So how do you deal with those decisions now? Because as you start training for a meet, things are going to get lit up a little bit.
Well, I have a really good physical therapist. So anytime I get like one of my friends, Michelle McDonald, she calls them niggles. So anytime I start getting a niggle, I talk with him, and he'll be like, okay, start doing this, start doing that. And I feel like he's magic, and it fixes it. And I'm a little just smarter about it, like just knowing when it's starting to feel like I can start feeling like when things aren't right, you start feeling it tugging or pulling a little bit. And now I know to stop. Instead of pushing through, I'll stop and I'll do a different exercise that doesn't bother it.
So the training continues. It's just the undulating, right? The undulating part of that from the injury standpoint there. That kind of plays into the longevity aspect, but that's only part of that. So what are some of the other things that play into your ability to still compete at a high level? Because what are you, 50?
Just turned
50. Just turned 50,
June,
right?
yeah.
So that's a lot of years, man. So
yeah, it is.
like 100 meets again. So keep going back to the 100 meet thing, which blows my mind. What are the nutrition, all those things, how do they all play in, and has that gotten better over the years?
Oh yeah, I mean, definitely since I think when I started I was like 26 or 27, so I mean I was still in that have a good time sort of phase in my life, and nutrition wasn't all that important. I've never been heavy. I've always been very active and thin, so I never really worried about like gaining weight, but I certainly wasn't eating well. I mean, I was eating okay, but and sleep. The biggest thing probably has been sleep. Huge proponent for naps. I get one every day. And we rest. Where our system that we have now, we do a 8-day system where we work out really hard for 2 days, and then we take 2 days off, and then 2 days on and 2 days off. And that's been key. That 2 days off of recovery has been huge. And then add in sleep and nutrition, and it all works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that hasn't, how long has it been that way?
We've done that probably since mid-30s, maybe, I think, or so.
Okay.
My nutrition and sleep's just gotten better. I've been better at it as I've gotten older and just gotten more knowledgeable about it. And then as I've gotten older, I've just made better decisions. You know, like before I would wakeboard in the morning and try to come squat in the afternoon, you know, and now I just plan things out a lot better. And so I probably sacrifice more things for the training now than I used to, or I just plan things out a little bit better so that I try to set myself up for a really great training day.
So in that case, is it no wakeboarding 12 weeks out, or is it wakeboarding on the off days further away from the squat?
Yeah, I'll stop doing it as we get probably like a month out, just because, you know, it's just, I've put so much effort into it. It's not worth like some little injury that might happen, you know, just because, you know, whatever. So I'll definitely, as we get closer, I'll do it in the beginning, but as we get closer, I just kind of level that stuff off, just to ensure. I mean, you're putting 100% effort into something. So, you know, you don't want to do things that will derail that for something silly that you can just do later.
When you do the seminars like you're going to do tomorrow, what are some of when that's over, if I were to ask you after that was over, what were the 3 biggest things that you see that you had to help them with? It's usually going to be kind of the same.
Yeah,
right?
it pretty much is.
Yeah, what are those 3 things?
Tomorrow's just a bench press seminar.
Yeah.
So usually it's hands are too narrow. Everyone close grips. They don't put their hands in a more powerful position. So that's usually one. Setup, of course. Just people are afraid of the arch. It's okay to arch haters. It puts you in a good position. So usually the arch is definitely one. And then most of the time, I would just say it's people just not realizing how much form matters. It's just breaking it all down and working on little pieces at one time. It's hard, but I feel like the bench is like probably the most technical lift, you know, out there. There's so many little things that you can do. So I always tell them like it's a lot at one time. And so then you gotta just take one piece and incorporate one piece at a time rather than trying to fix it all at once.
If you're watching them bench, so if I'm teaching somebody the bench and it's a small group or kind of like what you're doing, if you're watching them bench with the bar, what's the first things that you're looking for right when they get under the bar?
How they grip the bar, like where is it in their hands?
Yeah.
And then on the bar, where is it placed on the bar? And then when they're bringing the bar down to their chest, what does their arm angle look like when it's on their chest? Because there's kind of some rules, you know, in powerlifting of like, you should do this, but I mean, we're all shaped very differently. Like, you know, one of the things that we do is like, if you measure your clavicle length and you double it, that's how far your first fingers work, you know, should be about that area. But if you have a short shoulder width and really long arms, that doesn't work for you. And the opposite is true. So unless you're like of like average proportions, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
So usually if I look at a lot of people, like, they want to hold the bar in the back of their hands, and they want to tuck.
Yeah.
And then they want to be very narrow. And so that's usually the first things that we fix is how it's sitting in their hands, where their hands are going. And then I really feel like you need to put the bar in its most natural path. I don't really feel like you should be guiding it into any particular groove. Unless, like, you're just doing something weird, like benching below your neck or something, or your chin or whatever.
When you're looking at that, when do you get them set on the bench? So do you look at that before you look at how they're setting their shoulders on the bench? Because obviously you're looking at everything at the same time, but I've done this enough times to know there's so many things wrong when they first get under. So you're trying to process a lot of things. I'm just trying to figure out how you process it, then what you'll go to first.
Yeah, usually I have them just warm up. I'm like, just show me what you got.
Sure.
And I'll have them usually warm up a few times because, they don't usually do what they normally do on the first one, till you get a little bit of weight on there. And then we'll move their hands. And then, I'll help them with their setup. And everyone needs to set up differently. Like my setup might not work for you. You might have to, maybe you don't like your feet on the bench. Maybe you like to put your shoulders down and scoot them back, So we'll figure out what works for them. Rolling the shoulders down, squeezing the lats, or squeezing your shoulder blades together. We always work on that, getting your chest up, because a lot of people get real concave and then they overextend, like this. So we'll work on that. I mean, leg drive's the very last thing that I would coach someone on because it's really hard. And a lot of people can't get it. I always say, like when you're looking at, your bar path and your leg drive, it's like patting your head and rubbing your belly at the same thing. You're trying to get like two different things to work together. And for some people, that's really difficult to make them go. So if you're telling them a bunch of things, the most important part is, the setup and the bar path, and then the leg stuff can come later. Sometimes they're just not ready to add that in yet.
The USAPL rules didn't change with the IPF rules, did they?
No.
Okay. All right. So because the IPF were weird, like where the feet can go and can't go. It's like they're either, if you look at the room, like you're either allowed here or here. I don't know what you can do in the middle. Where you can, the reason I'm asking that is because you can't put your feet on the bench, right? But you can still.
We can.
Be able to get up.
Yeah. Yeah. And they, for years, IPF is trying to figure out, ways to keep the rainbow arches. And so I mean, it seems to have helped some, the rules that they put into place. They have I think your elbow joint has to go below your shoulder joint is like a rule, which is, I feel, kind of probably something that's a little tough to enforce, especially for like a side referee. But it seems to have limited some of it, if that was your goal.
If that was the goal.
Yeah.
It's just
But USA Powerlifting, I think when we left the IPF, it was kind of like, finally we can just do our own stuff. And I think like there was a certain amount of people that they definitely wanted to leave a long time ago, but the athletes didn't want to. They would constantly ask us, because every time the IPF would put down a new rule or a new standard or a new cost, they would be like, do we want to stay in here? And overwhelmingly, everybody wanted to, because, that was the highest level you could get to lifting. So essentially, they took the option away. And there's definitely certain people that were, I think, running our organization were just like, finally.
Yeah. Well, how many countries now is the USAPL in?
I'm on the international committee now, and we're working on it. I think we have around 30 right now. It's growing. It's going to be a banner year for us in 2024. There's a lot of international countries that are looking for an alternative.
Yeah. Well, it was tough for a lot of lifters. They were their hands forced, to make a decision based upon basically just the worlds, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, outside of the worlds, I don't think it really mattered.
It didn't. In some countries, though, they're only allowed one federation. You can't have two. You have to pick your country's federation, and that's it. And they don't have the option of lifting in others. So for some of them, they won't have a choice. They'll have to lift in IPF because that's their country's adopted
Would those be the countries that are actually paying the lifters?
Probably.
Yeah. I'm just curious. I mean, it would make sense, right?
Yeah, I would think so.
Let's take a bathroom break real quick because I'm going to explode here, then we'll come back.
Okay.
Today's episode is brought to you by First Attachment. Are you looking for a supplement brand that truly understands hardworking athletes? Look no further than First Attachment. I have known Justin Harris for pretty close to 2 decades. And if there's anybody that I trust with nutritional and supplement needs, it's Justin Harris. While I love all of their products, I'd suggest that you check out the Field Rations and WTH first. Go to www.firstdetachment.com and use the code TableTalk10 to save 10% off each order. The link is in the description. As I want to call out the limited edition apparel, the link is in the description. As I've spoken about before, the limited edition apparel is apparel that I basically come up with. So some of the designs suck, some of them not so much. It's a weird thing. The ones that I think are going to do really well usually don't. The ones that I think aren't going to do really well do really well. Either way, they're all limited runs, so it changes, every single month. But all limited edition items are tri-blend material with, the cut that everybody wants now that's a little bit tighter on their arms so they can show off how big their fucking arms are. The limited edition items directly support the podcast. So head over, pick up your shirt today. Could be a hoodie, could be shorts. We got these ball hugger shorts right now, which I would never wear, but I was told they were super popular. But you know what? They were wrong because they're still sitting there and I probably should discount them right now. Anyhow, if you want to see the discount on the ball hugger shorts, head over to the limited edition apparel, link in the description box. Today's episode is brought to you by First Attachment. Are you looking for a supplement brand that truly understands hardworking athletes? Look no further than First Attachment. I have known Justin Harris for pretty close to 2 decades. And if there's anybody that I trust with nutritional and supplement needs, it's Justin Harris. While I love all of their products, I'd suggest that you check out the Field Rations and WTH first. Go to www.firstdetachment.com and use the code TableTalk10 to save 10% off each order. The link is in the description. As I want to call out the limited edition apparel, the link is in the description. As I've spoken about before, the limited edition apparel is apparel that I basically come up with. So some of the designs suck, some of them not so much. It's a weird thing. The ones that I think are going to do really well usually don't. The ones that I think aren't going to do really well do really well. Either way, they're all limited runs, so it changes, every single month. But all limited edition items are tri-blend material with, the cut that everybody wants now that's a little bit tighter on their arms so they can show off how big their fucking arms are. The limited edition items directly support the podcast. So head over, pick up your shirt today. Could be a hoodie, could be shorts. We got these ball hugger shorts right now, which I would never wear, but I was told they were super popular. But you know what? They were wrong because they're still sitting there and I probably should discount them right now. Anyhow, if you want to see the discount on the ball hugger shorts, head over to the limited edition apparel, link in the description box. Today's episode is brought to you by First Attachment. Are you looking for a supplement brand that truly understands hardworking athletes? Look no further than First Attachment. I have known Justin Harris for pretty close to 2 decades. And if there's anybody that I trust with nutritional and supplement needs, it's Justin Harris. While I love all of their products, I'd suggest that you check out the Field Rations and WTH first. Go to www.firstdetachment.com and use the code TableTalk10 to save 10% off each order. The link is in the description. So we're back. Okay. What I'd like to do is what we just did with the bench. I want to go through with the squat as well. So if you have the athletes warming up and the athletes, the clinic athletes that you go, the seminars, not your high school kids. Those were different. Well, they should be, right? So how do you help them there? What do you look for with the squat?
Well, kind of a similar thing. You have them it's good just to see how they're doing things now first. Sure. But most people have their hands way too wide also when they squat, so they don't have them in tight enough and the bar is rolling up and down their back and all over the place. Or they're trying to like squeeze their lats way too tight and then they can't, then they're in this like weird lower back arch position. Mm-hmm. And then you're really just looking at where they're, you're looking at the side of the bar to see if it's going up and down straight and where is it wavering in and out and where do you need to fix with that. And a lot of it's foot placement. Mm-hmm. But squats are tough because everyone's so different. Like some people need a wide stance, some need a narrow stance, some need their toes out, some people need them straight on. Like your femurs hit into your hip sockets at different angles, mm-hmm. And some people are long torso, some people are short torso. So you have to really just pay attention to what's going to work. And sometimes I'll be like, okay, let's try it this way. Nope, that wasn't better. Let's do this. And then yep, that was better. And then usually we have them sit down to a box because that just helps with the bar path and where they should be moving and then how to, where to put the weight on their foot. So there's just mostly that. I mean, a lot of our seminars I enjoy because it's new lifters coming up. And there's so many little things you can do that just fixes their technique right away. And then they get so excited. I mean, we do them and then all of a sudden they want to try a PR, with just this new technique and they're hitting it. And it's just so rewarding.
Well, it's a great takeaway because I'm glad to hear you say that because when I'll take people through the same type of thing and I teach the squat from the foot up for the same reasons because it's all over the place and they don't know what they're doing, but the box is a good way because you can stop. Like I guess they could pause squat, but what a pain in the ass that would be. Stop here, lean here, do this, and when they end up breaking a PR, that becomes part of the seminar later. Right, is like you understand that you just broke your PR by 40 pounds. Right, you're not stronger.
No, you're just better technique.
Yeah, so just keeping your same crappy technique for 3 more years, you might have put 40 more pounds on, making a bad technique stronger.
And it's such a quick, easy fix most of the time.
Yes, and it's like that. It's like there's 100 pounds low-hanging fruit just right here. And the USAPL, if you just learn how to walk out right, I mean, that's a whole other conversation there.
Oh yeah, for sure. Definitely. They're like walking out like 10 feet behind the bar, and they're taking 100 steps. And I don't know why, but everyone's always so afraid they're going to hit the rack when they squat and that they need to be way
That's had to be a huge change for you though, because when you came in, the squat racks weren't the same as they are now. Now it's teeny tiny steps where before you probably had to take
a little bit a
little bit
now
further back.
Like I'm barely off it.
yeah
I can actually, when I finish, I can just lean forward. I don't even have to walk in.
No, that's to me that's awesome, right? Where purists want you to walk back by foot, but it is what it is. But the lack of time that I'll see with lifters who have to walk the weight out, that they spend actually focusing on walking the weight out, blows my mind. Yeah. Because you have to still do your warm-up set with the bar. Right. Like, why don't you be intentional? Right. But they don't, for me, from what I've seen, they don't get intentional until maybe their work set. Right. Like, how's this going to work?
Right. We have a saying in our gym, it's on our wall, it's don't waste your warm-ups. Mm-hmm. You're trying to warm up the body in a way that you're going to use it for maximum load. So if you're not doing it the same way you would be doing that weight, you're not warming up the correct parts. So you're just wasting your warm up. Mm-hmm. So, your bar lift should look just like your heavy walkout lift. It should be all the same all the time. You're talking about, repetition and competition. You will do it correctly if you do it the same way every single time you do it in practice. You won't even think about it. It's just automatic.
Right. And the other thing that I want to have you dig down a little bit deeper on is the bar path, right? Because I think anybody that's teaching a squat, no matter how they're teaching it or what principle, they're all going to agree on the same thing. It might move a little bit back on the way down, but on the way up, it should go straight. Yeah. If it doesn't go straight, then fix whatever you need to fix to make it go straight. What do you see the most common of why it's not going straight for people when you have to fix?
Most people shoot their hips up way too quickly, and then they're in this bent over position. So I like to pull down on the bar when I'm coming up, and so for some people that seems stupid. Like, you're trying to come up. Why are you pulling yourself down? But you're not. You're rolling your chest around the bar and you're pulling your hips through. So for me, that cue works. A lot of times we're just working on cues that make sense in your head. And so, you know, a lot of common cues don't work for me. So we've had to come up with little names of things that like tell me, okay, yeah, let's do it like this. That makes sense to me. So, so a lot of times when we go to these seminars, if we have different coaches there, it's great because what one coach will say will resonate with someone because we're all saying it differently. So then they're like, okay, I like that cue. That now I get what I'm supposed to be doing.
Have you found that over the years to be a weird thing? For instance, what I ran into is before the internet was what the internet is, or before social media was really there was a way you would teach things in the gym using certain cues, certain things that you would say. And then you just start saying that when you're online. And then people are like, no, that's not what you do. You're not supposed to arch. I'm like, well, they're really not arch. Then you got to think back that actually we're just getting our back tight. It's just we would say arch because it was a cue that worked. But on the other end of it, people are bashing. Like, no, man, you never should arch. So the same thing with the pulling the bar down. That's why I'm asking that. Because the pulling the bar down, people are going to be like, what are you talking about? That's just going to make you fall forward. Where when you elaborate. So over the years, have you found that you have to elaborate more and more on those things? Because you do have some online content out there.
I do sometimes. And then sometimes it's just not worth it. You know, they don't want you to explain. They just want to call you out for something. They just want to tell you you're wrong. So then it's not really... You're wasting your breath on that one.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. It's what I found with the content that I'll make, or actually it's more when I'm doing the clinics now and I have to give a cue that is it's kind of fucked up. Like I want you to pull your toes up, but that's not really what they're doing right on the squat. They're not doing that. That's just a way for them to keep their foot flat. But it makes them do that. Then I got to tell everybody else, now look, I'm not really telling them to pull their toes off the ground. I'm just trying to, because of that, because then they'll take it. I'm afraid that then they'll take it back to their gym.
And say, Dave Tate told me to pull my toes up.
Now everybody's falling over, on the bottom of the squat and falling over backwards. So I love the fact that you have different people that can explain it different ways, because I run into that all the time. It's like, can somebody come over here and just please explain to this guy how to pack the shoulders? Because I've tried 3 different, and then they'll say something, or even the same thing. Just change the messenger. And it's like, oh, and then I'm mad. Like it was the same thing.
I just said that.
Like, what did I not say right? That's where the teenage kids come into play, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so let's now go to the deadlift. So when you're watching them pull, because that's a tricky one, because there's no eccentric first.
Well, and then you have the sumo versus conventional, and it is funny. I was thinking about this the other day. It used to be like tons of sumo deadlifters, but it's like almost like it's going away. Like there's way less sumo deadlifters now than conventional. And I don't know if it's because of the negative commentation from online. And I do find too that a lot of the younger guys too, they do better with like an in-between, like a hybrid where their feet are just outside their hands, so it's like a little bit of a mix of both. But I mean, with both of them, you still have to get behind the bar. You can't be over the bar, and your shoulders are hugely important. We say protect your armpits, like you forgot to put deodorant on and you want to keep that smell in. So we do that. And then like the major thing really is like your shoulders are moving first. So for me, that's been important. Like as long as my shoulders are the first thing to go, everything else just follows. So some of it is making sure you're not doing that hinged movement that you're So sometimes you can just break things down into simplicity. Okay. Get behind the bar, protect your armpits, shoulders first. And then a lot of times everything will just travel. There's some small things to do with foot placement and things like that, and where your hips are and how high your hips should be up when you're pulling and things like that. But I feel like those things you can fix, but the major things is those top 3.
All right, so now let's take those 3 and now let's go back to the high school, junior high kids, right? So if you're trying to teach them the squat, where does that start?
So we start a little bit with, we only start with the bar, and we do box squats for a long time before I'll let them free squat, because most of them don't want to squat to depth in the first place. So, and whether you're competing or not, there's a lot of strength benefits to squatting below parallel. I mean, there just is. So that's important to me that they have that. So we'll line them up by height. We'll find their boxes, and they're just box squatting for a while till they have to test out of that before they can free squat. For me, because then I know they're good. So, we start with the hands, getting under the bar, where the bar should be. It is funny too now. There's with so much available on social media and YouTube, like everyone wants to look down now, I'm like, and put their chain in their mouth when they're squatting, or put something in their mouth or whatever. So you're battling a little bit of that, but if you got, they know what I'm talking about, so they tend to just listen. And if they don't want to, they don't have a choice. They have to. This is my gym. This is how we're doing it. Because ultimately, I don't want them to get hurt, especially when you're dealing with high school kids. I can't, my son's baseball team, he's got 3 baseball players that are out of baseball and sports because they messed up their back squatting for life, and they're 17 years old. I mean, it's not something to fuck around with.
No.
You have to be supervised. I spend a lot of time teaching the kids how to spot. Nobody's allowed to lift, and I tell them, I don't care if it's the bar. You will otherwise, you know what they want to do? They want to pick up their phone and scroll through social media. So phones are away, and you're concentrating on, and you're looking at whoever's lifting's form, and you're giving feedback. So everyone should be doing something all the time. With
a couple things with them finding, I don't want to say influencers, but they find aspirational figures, right, on Instagram or YouTube. Then they want to emulate them. Then they'll come back, and that's a tough one, to where I've started to come back to them and say, I want you to find 7 other people.
That's a good one.
Right, and then what I would like you to show me the common things that all 7 do. Right, so let's find the common traits among 7 of the greatest, because there's always going to be variances in form and style and stuff like that. That seldom works, but maybe it gets them to look at another one. But with the spotting, that's something that I wish the online presence I wish they would use spotters, because the number of people I see benching 5 plates and stuff with no spotters, what the fuck? Because kids are going to see that. Obviously, they've never really been hurt, or they've never been in a gym environment to realize things can go bad really fast. Not even getting hurt. Things can just go bad fast, real quick. And then if there's no spotters, what the hell? Yeah.
I mean, it's dangerous. I mean, we have always usually 5 people working out with us. Why would you not spot your friend and want them to be safe? If you're just standing there, why would you not help? And most of the time, I feel like when you're in a gym, people are there because they love lifting. And I've never went to a gym where someone's like, yeah, I'm not spotting you. I've got time for that. Everyone's always willing to help or spot or, whatever. So I think some are worried about the inconvenience. Some might be worried about them being in their video. I don't know. But
it could be. It could be. I didn't think about that. That could very likely definitely be. With the groups, people have been bitching about this for years. The breakdown of training crews. Obviously, you have a training crew because it's in your house. Where over the last decade, it's become less prevalent. You can walk into powerlifting gyms and they can have 7 combo racks and then 1 person on every one of the, which just never. It doesn't ring with me. Why would anybody ever do that? Why wouldn't they all work together? Because there is that group environment, motivation aspect, and more eyes watching to be able to see things. But it's kind of just been the way it is, and so you've seen that, but you haven't, because you've been training in your home gym the whole time.
Well, this summer I followed my son around playing baseball all summer. It's the summer before his senior year. And we were all over the Southeast. So we actually worked out in quite a few gyms this summer because we were on the road a lot. And we went down to Marietta, Georgia, and lifted at Marietta Barbell. It was one of the best atmospheres I've probably ever been in, but the owner requires it. She encourages it, and everybody in there was yelling. Some people don't like that, but they were supporting each other. The heavy guy was lifting. They were running over there, spotting him every time he was ready to go. They were helping each other out. So I think some of it is I love lifting in those smaller gyms because they've established a community there. Whereas when we worked out in Nashville at a very large gym there, and it was more of a bodybuilding gym, honestly, and there were some strongmen, but there was only like 2 benches, which means it was bodybuilding gym. And so these kids were on it, and I needed to get some close grips in. So I went over. I'm like, would you mind if I worked in with you? And they're like, well, we're almost done. I said, no, you don't need to be done. I said, I'll just go after you. And I promise you won't have to take off too much weight for me. It'll be okay. And so one of them was just getting into powerlifting. I think the other guy was a bodybuilder, but it was fun. Like we were just loading, spotting, encouraging each other, and you could just tell that wasn't something they were used to doing. So,
well, there's also a lot to be learned from training with people who have been around for a long time.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that you pick up just watching how they approach a lift, you know, how they rest, you know, what they do in between, you know, all the things that you don't see on Instagram.
Sure.
You know, all those things play into whatever that lift is.
I've said for a long time that I've been as successful I am is because of my training partners. I definitely wouldn't be, I don't know if I'd still be in it, but I definitely wouldn't be as successful because of them. I mean, that it's an environment you look forward to going to. You're seeing your friends every day. It's people to be honest with you. It's time to just break down and shoot the shit about whatever went well and not well. But whenever you're lifting, there's encouragement there. And so as long as you have like a training setup that you enjoy, then it's easy to keep doing it. So, but you have to sort of work to make that. Sometimes I tell people, they're like, oh, I wish I had people like you. I'm like, well, invite some. Sometimes it's just a matter of inviting people. Like the people we train with is like Donovan's high school buddy, the guy down the street that owns the Chick-fil-A, you know, the other guy down the street that's, he benches with us, sometimes my kids and sometimes my kids' friends. So they don't have to be like some, you know, elite big time lifters. You just need people, you know, you just need people around you that will be honest and critique you and you critique them and then we'll give you the encouragement that you need and make it fun. So I'm like, well, start your own group. Let's go. Just keep asking people. Sometimes there's that person that really wants to get in there and work out, but they're just too afraid to start it or they don't know where to go and they just need an invite. Well,
you being the lifter at the level that you are, having somebody to be honest with you is important, but that's your husband, right? So
yeah.
How does that work or how has that played out over the years?
Good. In the beginning, we had to kind of figure out our flow.
Yeah.
You know, he was a high school wrestler for 10 years, and I had to explain to him that I was not a high school wrestler, and I did not do well with shouting. Like, I need you to, if I'm doing something wrong, I just need you to say it not like I was stupid and was doing it wrong, but I could do it better by doing it this way. Wording is key with me, you know, like if it's a positive, encouraging environment. Now, some people like to be smacked around or yelled at. That's fine, but that's not me.
How long did it take you guys to figure that out?
Not long at all. I'm like, I'm not doing this if this is how we're going. And he adjusted, and we adjusted too. Like, you know, the other day, I was spotting him, and I had this habit of, as he's like grinding out, going, yep, you got it. And he goes, I hate it when you do that. And I'm like, okay, I'll stop. I did do it one time, but I've caught myself. But you have to have that honesty with each other. Like, you know, he was like, you know, I don't think you're locking out your lifts like you normally do. You're just not finishing them to the top. Because as you do it for a long time, it's just natural for things to just start you know, shifting, or you're just not focused on it or well. Things will always start breaking down somewhere, And you have to have someone that's going to tell you like, hey, why are you doing this? And sometimes it's like our neighbor, he's like, you don't normally do it like that. I don't feel like you're getting your hips down as far when you deadlift. Mm-hmm. You know, he's not a competitor. He doesn't know anything about it, but he noticed I was doing something that I didn't normally do, and he would point it out.
So with you guys, do you think that's helped you with your relationship outside of the gym? Because you've been married for 27 years, so that's an accomplishment there.
Yeah, I think we're almost on 30 in September. Yeah, for sure. Well, I think it definitely, a lot of people ask, you know, like especially staying in the sport, it's important to have a supportive spouse, whether they're in it or not. Like if they get upset for you for being at the gym too long or traveling to these different things or whatever, it's not going to work out real well. You need someone that's sort of in it with you, whether they're actually lifting or they're part of the business or part of supporting you in it. That's super important. So, you know, he lifts as well. He started competing, I think, a year after I did. I was complaining that he didn't know about something. And so he's like, well, I'll go do it and then I'll know. Mm-hmm. And so he's been competing ever since also. He's got a lot of masters titles, a couple open titles. So it just helps that we're both sort of passionate about the same thing, but it is like life encompassing. So, and we started off as friends, so that always helps too. Yeah. You know, but you have to evolve over time, and we have to be okay with saying to each other, like, I don't like it when you do that. Mm-hmm. Now you can do it nice sometimes, sometimes not so nice if you're really in the moment, but you have to be okay with it.
With the teaching and the training, so you've been teaching for, I think, 27 years. What have you taken from your teaching and applied to training? Because we talk a lot about all the lessons that we learn in the gym that we apply to other areas in our life. Right. When you do something for 27 years, there's no way it's going to not apply positively.
I feel like it more helps me with the seminars when I'm trying to teach people, because one lesson that I've learned in teaching is you never assume somebody knows something. So it's best just to start at the bare bottom and then work your way up at a speed that you think is going to work. With training, I just think teaching is incredibly challenging. And there's ups and downs, as in with lifting. And so I think I've just got good at being, not letting the downs or not letting when things go horribly. I've gotten pretty good at not letting that destroy me, and know that tomorrow is a new day. And usually with the coupling, you know, with Donovan, like if I'm having a shitty training cycle, he can go, well, you know, we did this and this and this, and that's probably contributing to that, and you didn't really think about that. So it's not really that you're getting weaker. There was just other factors that were influencing that training cycle, and that it'll get better. So a lot of it's just that.
Figuring it out
and being okay that some days aren't so good.
Yeah.
You know,
well, I think
you can't let that destroy you.
When you look at the base of your program, which I think you said you're on like the 32nd?
31, I think.
31 iteration of that. But the base has kind of been the same the whole time, where one of the things I try to instill in people's heads is they have to figure out what works for them, whatever their base is, and then learn how to auto-regulate, which is kind of what you're doing with the undulation type thing. And then use that to build off of, because even if you have a terrible training cycle or a terrible meet, there were still a lot of things that went right.
Absolutely.
You know, and it could just simply be your sleep sucked the whole time. So everything worked.
Yeah,
except
or you're stressed
you didn't rest.
out about this or that. I mean, the same thing happens in teaching. You'll spend this time creating this amazing lesson that you know the kids are going to love, and it all goes to hell. And then you're like, okay, well, this worked, but this definitely didn't work. So we're going to have to, you know, revamp this, toss that out, and keep this. This was the good part. And it's the exact same way with training.
How would you explain how the sport has grown since you've started? Because we said there was the influence of CrossFit coming in there, and there's those different factors, but this is a big span, and even in the last 5 years, there's been changes.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's not even near the same.
Yeah.
Like the women's side's exploded. I think...
what is the percentage now for the USAPL?
It's not quite 50-50, but it's getting close.
It's getting there. Okay.
I want to say it's like 43, 44.
Okay.
We get the stats, you know, a state chair, you get the stats of the membership and stuff, and it's getting there, which is pretty cool. And I think a lot of it is coming from, you're starting to see lifters start earlier. We had bench nationals last weekend in Phoenix, and they did youth nationals at the same time. It was so cool seeing those little kids out there. And the amazing part, I'm getting goosebumps, was like the kids were like shouting before they go out there. They were intense. They had intensity. They had, you know, their walkout, how they did it. They had their celebration when they were done. They weren't these timid little kids, you know, trying to figure this stuff out. Like, they were in it. And so I think like our future is so bright because we have this whole generation. I mean, I didn't start till my 20s. I didn't compete till my late 20s. We have women and men starting high school sometimes earlier now. And so what will they do for this sport as they grow? Hopefully they'll stay in it. I think the longevity part is, I'm not sure, because we're very much like, I want it now kind of society, and not that I want to work hard and wait for the gains. So I'm not entirely sure how that's going to play out futuristically for us.
Hasn't that kind of always been the case, though, with these strength sports?
I don't know. I feel like, you know, for a while, you know, you had a certain group of people that were in it for years. Now, whether they stayed the whole time or not, but you had these competitors. And now you have, they're in, they're out, they're in, they're out, they're in, they're out. There's flashes in the pan. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, that's one of those things that as I've gotten older, I begin to question a lot of things that happened in the past. Like, was that really what I thought it was?
Yeah.
Like, it's, we're 90%, even when it was only 20,000 people in the sport, we're like 90% just in and out within 3 years. I don't know, because I was always part of a group that had the long-term people.
It felt like when we went to Worlds, you saw really the same athletes year after year after year after year. Now, again, you're talking about, you know, the top end that are going to Worlds, but it just seemed like you had a lot of the same faces for longer periods of time. I mean, that was the perception anyway. I don't know if that
But it's harder to qualify now because there's more people too.
Oh, for sure.
So they could still be the same faces. They just didn't make it back.
That's true too.
You see, I don't, these things like fuck with my head. They do, because I don't like to assume, like you said earlier, I don't like to assume certain things unless I actually look and
know.
And then it's like, do I really want to take the time to go to Open Powerlifting and start digging through all this and downloading shit, you know, to figure it out? But that I don't know. But I know the sport, obviously, you know, it's grown. But I would agree. I don't know if as many are sticking.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a tough one to tell.
That's a tough one too. And I think, I mean, and that goes back to training. You seeing, you know, people are getting hurt, it feels like, a lot more often, or maybe they're just more vocal about it. I'm not sure which one it is.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know either.
I don't know. So are you seeing a little bit more of that? But I mean, the events are amazing. Like, I mean, we used to go to the VFW and have your event there. And now, you know, we're having them on these huge stages with music and announcers and smoke.
Did that start to happen before the break with the IPF?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Was that part of the problem?
I think so. I think so, because those are big money-making events, and we were making the money.
Well, that was one of the negatives, you know, with the IPF and the USAPL or ADFBA. It's just like watching paint dry. It was just boring as all hell.
Right.
And super quiet, no excitement. And where I noticed the difference was maybe 2018, 2017, when it was at the Arnold. Yeah. And it was like 3 of those rooms, and it was just
huge.
It was, so I'm looking at this, I'm like, what the fuck is that? Like, I mean, it was like, you know, if I was a kid coming into this is what I'd want to do. Yeah. And then, you know, down the hall, they had the XPC, and I was speaking with Mike Fahey, I think at the time, the guy who was directing Westside versus the World. And I said, you know what, when you compare these two, if you're a teenager walking through here, they got to do something different. Right. They either got to build a cage around the monolift and just make it look like a cage fight. Right. They have to do something, because compared to what's going on down there, just from a marketing, branding type thing, there's no comparison.
No. And I think what I thought was really cool was, and I don't know if it was him, but it was somebody in the XPC admin was down there talking to Larry Maley, our president, and they were just sharing ideas. So to me, that just says how powerlifting is so encompassing in its community.
Sure.
You know, they didn't say, we're not sharing our secrets with you, you know, whatever. They were like brainstorming about how they could make things better and sharing ideas back and forth. And to me, I was just like, this is cool.
Well, see, what I found was interesting about it is because if you go back a decade to the WPO, when it was in there and it had the 3 rows, it was a spectacle.
Was it Kieran
Kidder? Yeah.
He was nuts and crazy.
Yeah. And then the USAPL was in like a warm-up area of the expo, and it flips, right? And that's who's playing into the younger demographic,
right? From
marketing-wise, like what's appealing to that, and that's all. I think all federations make all federations grow. Granted, I think there's too many, but if you have to have some to be able to have competition. That I agree with 1,000%. And you need to have drug-free and not drug-free.
Yeah, there has to be a place for everybody.
Yeah, because when I came in, it was the USPF. That was it. Maybe the AAU, but the USPF was it. Then it split APF, ADFPA. And I was like, okay, got to make a decision here.
Which way do I go?
Yeah, and I never in my mind did I think that people that were going this way were actually going to beat the. I never thought that would be part of the whole process. I'm like, isn't this why they made this? Is so you didn't have to worry about doing that, and you could just do this. And then somewhere along the lines, just people get butthurt and start their new federation. It just keeps happening over and over and over and over again. But the main ones still grow. Yeah, is what I.
If they got a good, I guess sort of business model of how they want to do things, and they're willing to be progressive and grow, like you can't just say this is the way we do things. This is our tradition. This is how we do. You have to be willing to. And then what I thought was cool with like USA Powerlifting is we always have these groups where we kind of get the lifters together and say, what do you want? Like if we did this, is this one? How do you want this pro series to work? What are your ideas? We're thinking this. Is this the right path? So they're trying to get input in from their members. And it's important, like for me, I feel like, I'm 50 now. So, we went to the Virginia Pro, and it was in Ashburn. And so they kind of set it up like a stage with smoke and stuff, and you walked down this aisle to get to it, and they would play music. And so they would start your music. You had a different song for each lift, so 9 songs. And every lift, they were like, do you guys want to walk down every single time before you lift, or do you want to just do like the first one and the last one? And all the young lifters were like, every time we want to walk down. So for me, like we're walking down and you're high-fiving everyone and you're trying to get everyone amped up. Like by the time I got to the deadlifts, I just wanted to nap. And my head hurt so bad from the loud music. And I was like, this sucks. But everyone else probably thought it was amazing. So you have to kind of look at where your growth and popularity is coming from and be willing to reach down to them and get their ideas and input, because they're different.
How do you see the pro series moving forward?
Oh, I'm not sure, honestly. I think, it was a great alternative to not having the international competition, because we lost that. So this was sort of the response to that. And it's been sort of, I think, a work in progress. Just the qualifying and getting your card and what that actually means. I think once we establish an international membership, I don't know how much part the pro series will be of that, or if they care about it. I don't know. It seems a little messy right now.
All the money meets always seem messy to me. And you've been around, so you've seen the same things I have. Yeah. Like they'll do well for a couple of years and die. And, I give a lot of on the non-tested side, I give a lot of these lifters credit because they know how to jump before the meat dies, which I don't know how they're doing it. Like that's a whole different skill because they manage to just, keep jumping around with all that, where you're not going to, I don't believe we're going to see that in the USAPL side because that's the governing body. It's one governing body.
Right.
These other ones, like 3 different federations that are trying to compete with each other to move through.
Yeah. So I'm not sure. I mean, I'm just, everyone's like, I go to the Arnold or wherever, I'll lift in like 3 different events or whatever. And they're like, why do you do that? I'm like, this is so much fun to me right now. I don't know. I'm 50. How long can I do this? I don't know. I'm going to do as long as I can. But I'm enjoying this. Like, it is so much fun to be able to lift on that stage in front of all those people and get to know your competitors. And I mean, I've always been it because I love the competition part of it. I love messing with the numbers. I love figuring out the attempts. I love it down to the deadlift. Like, that gives me goosebumps. I love that scenario. And we have it in spades now. Like, you go into an event and you don't necessarily know who the winner is going to be. It could change year to year, event to event. So I think that's exciting. And I love lift to lift. I love being part of that and seeing it grow. I mean, we couldn't even fill a flight with women when I first started. And now, like, at our nationals, we have 100 in the weight class and we have to have a prime time for the top 12. I mean, how awesome is that? Yeah. And then prime time is just an amazing experience because it's all the lifters that lifted that day are down there watching you that night and cheering you on, and they're drinking and partying and having a great time, and it's magical.
Well, it's aspirational too. Yeah. So every lifter is going to want to get there. Right. So I do believe something like that can replace the Worlds. Maybe even be better. Because, I mean, over a period of time, what's the Worlds mean? Well,
our meets have always been way better than the World meets. Yeah. You went to the World meets to win a championship title, but most of the time there's nobody there watching you, and it was in some shitty little place.
Yes.
So unless they step up, their game, I don't know. But I would have chose going to the Arnold over Worlds if you had made me choose it.
Would you say that you're having more fun now than you did even a decade ago?
Yeah. Definitely.
Why do you think that is?
Well, like I said, I think because I have such an established, having this established, record gives me the liberties. Like, I remember when I was going for my first world title, like, I think I took 3rd and then I took 2nd and then I finally took 1st and I took 2nd and then I took 1st, and so there was so much pressure to win this world championship title and to get it into records and all that sort of stuff. And I did it for a long time. I was pretty good at it. I think I'm still hanging in there fairly well at my age, but like the pressure of gaining titles and stuff is off. Like, for me, now it turns into like, how long can I be competitive at this at my age? Like, I was top 3 last year out of everybody. How cool is that? I mean, I didn't win my weight class, I took 2nd, but like, how, for me now, it's more of a matter of like, how long can I keep doing this at this level and prove that like 50 is not washed up and done.
No, I mean, that pulls more in, as you said, that the more of the people that are asking you questions and coming to you are in their 40s, starting the sport in their 40s, which is great. Yeah. It's rough when you started as a teenager. You're probably not going to make it to the 40s, but when they come in later, they can compete, forever, in their 80s, if they make it there, right? Like, if they make
Hopefully
it there. Yeah. The only thing that I can think that would take you out would be lack of interest, and I don't see that, right? Not if you're having more fun now than you did a decade ago, or injuries, and you're taking care of making sure they don't accumulate. Right. So, well, normally they don't just you don't just wake up one day and there's a bad new one.
I hope not. You never know. And it is neat. Like, I hear a lot of people are getting in their 40s and 50s like, God, I wish I would have found this years ago. But I'm like, well, you found it now. So make the most of what your time is now, make it part of you. And I think, you don't have to be an elite lifter for this to be an amazing part of your life. There's a lot of people that just enjoy the training and competing locally in that community that brings those competitions, bring out the community, right? It's a lot of people coming together. They really, in all powerlifting, I think it's so cool that they just embrace the new people. They help them out, help them figure out the scoreboard, when they should go. It's very welcoming. And that's one of the reasons I probably stayed in the sport so long is it's just a very welcoming, good community of people. I've made friends for years that I still talk to. Tomorrow we're going to Chicago and we're going to meet up for dinner with a friend of ours that we met, I don't know, in 1999, it's just, it's good people, and it's all, yes. And we love the sport. And we love sharing about the sport that we love.
Well, the sport isn't all about the top lifters.
No.
Right? It's more visible, but if you go to Open Powerlifting, which I tell everybody to do, like go to openpowerlifting.org, find your weight class, scroll down, and at a certain point, you're going to think, I think I could do that. Then look at all the people that are under that number.
Yeah.
There's a lot, right? So 90% of the sport are those people that you're talking about.
Right.
They actually provide the foundation for the top 10% to be able to do what they do.
Yeah. I've been to the North Carolina State Chair for 2004. We have some of the same lifters have been lifting since then. They look forward to our fall festival every year. They show up every year and they're working at, improving their numbers and doing better. And it's just neat and they're happy with that.
Yeah.
That's good. They don't want to, they're not interested in going to a national level or traveling overseas or anything like that. That's their thing. That's who they are. And they like that.
See, that to me, that's the most awesome part of the sport that I've connected more with as I've gotten older, because what I think happens when we were talking earlier about some of the top lifters that get lost in the drama, they forget why they started. And I tell every one of them, go to a local meet. I don't care what it is, what federation it is, just go to a local meet and watch the person pull 300 for the first time. Or 3 reds or, 2 reds, whatever it is. Right. Just watch these people break PRs that are in their first meet. And you'll remember. And you'll be like, wow, this is freaking awesome. Yeah. And then compare that to the feeling that you have when you're at a pro meet or a top meet and you're frustrated because so-and-so's doing this and so-and-so said this and fuck this and fuck that. Like, remember where it came from. Right. And then all that stuff that they get fed, you don't, because you already said that, you just ignore it. Well, that's because you're around all the other things, right? You see all the other things. You see all the good things constantly. They end up in a bubble, right? To where they're online coaches, they're trainers, they only communicate with other top lifters. This is their world, that little bubble. The only meets they go to are those meets. The only things they go to hang out are those things. And that's not, it's such a small part.
And I think, for what I've seen, is a downfall of our sport is people don't get involved in it outside of lifting anymore. For our events, we used to, like I said, our entry fee was $55, bench was $45. Now our entry fee is $155 because we have to pay our spotters and loaders, we have to pay our referees, we have to pay our score table help. Then we're trying to keep up with these good events. So you have the live streaming, you have the media, you have all that stuff. Because nobody wants to help anymore. Nobody wants to be a part of that anymore unless you're paying them. And we've lost that part of our sport. And I hate it because it makes it inexpensive, or it makes it too expensive for some people to get in. Your high school kid, you're going to pay a $45 membership fee and then $155 to get an event? Probably not happening. Yeah. So that is, I think, one of the downfalls, and one that I hope we can fix. As the state chair, like some of our top lifters, I'll reach out and say, I need help at this meet. I need you to show up. And sometimes they will. Sometimes they won't. But I've made it a mission to ask, because sometimes you just have to ask. And then they're like, oh, yeah, I'd love to do that. Not always, but sometimes just the invitation is enough. But we've lost that part, which makes me sad.
Yeah, I wonder how to get that back.
I don't know, because even my high schoolers, they don't want to come unless you're paying them. Like, they don't want to take their Saturday off and spot and load weight all day unless you're going to make it worth their while. I mean, I have some kids that would do it just because I asked them to, but it's not enough. And we ended up paying them because I was tired of the day of the meet. The people that said they would come, they don't show up, and then you're screwed.
No, you're trying to pull people from the audience.
Yeah, and that's never good.
No.
So that's probably the one, I think, the downfall we got. And like you said, if those lifters went back to their grassroots level, they would probably find some of their love back for why they got into it and celebrate all those wonderful things that the average lifter is doing. And I strongly
believe so, because I just look at how the lifters don't train in groups anymore. They train individually. So all that community part is slowly kind of slipped away, which may be kind of why you're not having the volunteers for meets, because they're not groups of 20 training together that they're all going to go help, from that thing. And as that slips away, some things are good about it. There's always good and bad. Sure. There's always a balance, but it is, the bubble gets smaller, I guess is what I'm saying. It's super small to where they're online. They're not training people in person. Right. So
I feel like though, what like COVID taught us anything is that as human beings, we need to be around people. We're more successful, we're happier, we're mentally more stable when we're around people. Now there's your exceptional people that just are not people. But I think to that, having that community lifting, or whether it's just a women's group or some sort of club or whatever, we're better.
Way better. I mean, with the lifting community, just specifically, if you look at what's online, you would think that these groups hate these groups and hate these groups, but anytime you see them all in a gym together, they all get along. Right. Well, they need to get together more often to understand that there may be some things that they disagree on competitively or so forth, drug-free, not drug-free, squat depth, whatever it is. Yeah. 90% they all agree on, and 100% they all love the same journey.
Sure.
But they don't know this unless they're actually like
together.
Yeah. Which is, to me, it's a frustrating part, but I do see a resurgence.
I hope so.
Of that. Well, I see it now, just a resurgence of that just amongst people who lift in different federations. Yeah. Where there was a while, it was like, no, man, you don't talk to those people. Yeah. Like, why? Like, why? That makes no sense to me. Yeah. Like, why would you? Well, no,
they're with that.
Yeah, they're with that. You don't do that. Like, this is so stupid. Like, that makes no sense to me. Maybe they figured out, how to recover between training.
Right. Well, that was the funnest thing about the events before, the internet and stuff came, was that we'd all just sit down and talk about what we were doing and what was working. And we tried this and this didn't work, but this worked. And it was like, just like a group therapy session, almost like, that was so much fun. And it didn't matter who you were or where you came from. It was just a great meetup because you were together for that amount of time. You weren't going anywhere.
There were the questions that were being submitted, and I have a Discord group where they have questions as well. And unless I missed something when I was stalking you over the last few days, there were a lot of questions about mindset. So have you presented or did something on mindset, which is where these questions would stem from?
Yeah. Some of my seminars, they've asked for like mindset things. And so, I do some of that. And it's really, it was something I've had to work on for a very long time. I was a complete mess when I started. I would lift less on the platform than I could in the gym. I was nervous. I spent a lot of time in the bathroom, just nervous. And then I finally just had to get to a point where I was like, okay, I got to do something. So I started reading books, on, mental mind games and sports. And one that, this was a very long time ago, but Body Mind Mastery by Dan Millman was one that a friend of mine, he was a collegiate national wrestler from University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And so he's like, you got to read this book. It helped me. And so it really talked about visualizing, which I know you've talked about a lot. And so I really just started with that. And I would walk outside, and as I'm walking, I would go through like just the moment my foot hit to the platform, my walk up, every minute detail. And I would have to redo it because even in my mind, I would screw it up. Like I wouldn't set up right, or I'd miss the press, and I had to then I have to stop and I have to start all the way back over until I could do it where I was doing it the way I knew I wanted it to look. And then it's just a matter of keep doing that over and over and over time. They've got a lot of studies that show like just mental practice equals, a good part of physical practice.
Oh, yes.
If you're constantly doing it in your mind and you're setting it up. So I do a ton of that. That's been a really big game changer for me. And then the other one was like, I would have a hard time like walking out to the platform. I would literally be thinking about, what if this happens? What if I screw up? What if I don't miss it? What am I going to tell my family? As I'm walking up to the platform, like all these negative thoughts were coming through my head. So I would use this visualization tactic where I had like a box, and I would take all those thoughts and put them in a box, and I close it. And then I found out if I just yelled and I got the crowd to yell for me, it like made all that go away. And I could just go. And then I would be on autopilot, and I could hear Donovan on the side yelling our keywords to remind me to do keep things, but the negative would keep at bay. And so that's, I mean, you have to find your own things that work for you. But for me, giving like a little warrior shout, which is not my personality at all. I feel like it's a different person that walks out there. You know, I'm not boisterous like that, but I got so mad I shouted one day, and then it was like crystal clear. My son uses the nose stuff. And I'm like, why do you use that? And he goes, clears everything out.
Yeah, it's
helps me focus. You know, so you have to find what works for you.
Over a period of time, that skill gets better.
Yeah.
Right. So it's what I want to remind people of is I think what they try to do, and I'm sure they've told you the same, is they'll try it, but they can never get it right. They don't have the focus. They can't pay attention. And I think Jan Blakely's the one that pointed this out to me. They already daydream. So they're already kind of doing it. Yeah. They just need to build upon what they're already kind of doing. Yeah. And then just thinking about it and then going from there it's huge. Yeah. Because I think people with visualization think that they should be able to close their eyes and just see everything perfectly. I'm like,
it's like work. It's like practice. I kind of equate it to like people that meditate. You know, you can't just sit down and meditate. It's like an art form you have to work at before you can get to that spot, which I've never been able to do, but I've never really tried.
Sure.
But I think it's kind of the same way. It's taken me years to get to the mental toughness I am now. And I can definitely tell you that I've definitely won events because I was the toughest competitor mentally, not necessarily physically. Because I got to a point where I was so confident in myself and my abilities and able to pick numbers. And I think people get too worried about these percentages. Well, I can't go to that number because it's not 85% of this number, and I can't make that kind of jump, you know, or I can't do this or that. And I've got to where like that doesn't bother me, and I'm willing to take risks and do things because I'm pretty confident in myself and my abilities, and things don't have to be a certain way. Like we had a meet the other day, and this guy wanted to bring his own bar to warm up on because he can't warm up on any other bars. And one person actually brought their own weights because they didn't want to use our weights. And then somebody was upset because we had some bumper weights and they need steel plate weights. And I'm like, if that is throwing off your entire game, you really need to work on the mental aspect of things. If one small thing is off from your normal everyday, this is going to be tough for you. And it's an area that you need to work on. Like if I go in the back and, you know, it's all kilos. I still don't know kilos. Like 20 years later, I'm terrible at it.
You're a math teacher.
I know. I'm awful. I'm awful with the kilos and the plates and the colors. I just never really took the time to really own it and know it. It's something that my brain just does not want to grasp onto that. So I don't even worry about it. But I'm like, oh, that's about what I think I want. And I'll just go warm up and with that. Like there's a white on there. There's a yellow on there. Oh, there's a red and yellow. That's fine. I'll just go hit that. Like it doesn't have to be these precise numbers. Because I know I'm just warming up and it's not the actual competition, you know, and it's okay. And like we were at the bench nationals, it was incredibly crowded. There was probably not enough warm-up area, and we're all trying to get in. People are panicking, and I'm like, it's all right. We'll take turns. Like, it'll be fine. We'll get it in. And then there is some comfort in knowing that your opener is something you could hit. I think openers are important, that they're light. Yeah. You know, it's something that even if I didn't get my fourth warm-up in, I'll be fine. You know, it'll be okay. So I think there's some mental, I don't know if you want to call it mental toughness, but there is some of that comes with a lot of competing and putting in the time and all that.
Well, I think if you're very competitive too, and you can build that up, then that becomes even a stronger advantage in the warm-up room, because while you want to see everybody do well, you can also look around and see everybody self-destructing. Oh yeah.
Oh, for sure.
And it's like, you know, okay, that's good. Yeah. You know, that's good.
I've seen girls, they've burned themselves up before they even got on the platform. Yeah. You know, with whatever music they're listening to, or their intensity, or their mantra that they're going, and they're sunk before they even walked out there. You know, you see a lot of that. I like for me, I like to just chit chat. Like I just, gets boring if you're just sitting there. So I just like to talk to people. Some people don't like that, but I'll just, shoot the shit with people or whatever. And then soon as they start loading my weight, then I'm on, and then I'm off. And so, I mean, it could be a big calorie burn if you're not careful.
Oh yeah. A mental burn too.
Yeah.
Just fry you out.
Yeah. Like you're just done.
Time.
So, I mean, it's an art. I'm to a spot where I've spent, 115 competitions, tweaking it. And I'm still learning. I've never stopped learning. I've never stopped tweaking. I mean, Donovan and I sit at every competition. We go, okay, what went well? What didn't go well? And did you have fun? I mean, those are the 3 questions that we sort of debrief afterwards. And there's always different things. It's never the same.
There should be, because that will change how the training should lay out.
Yeah.
Well, no, let me back that up a little bit. It may change how the training, because you can have a great training cycle, but the meet not go well.
Oh, yeah. I've had the opposite. I feel like I've had really shitty ones, and they were some of my best days ever.
Yeah.
And I think it's because the training was so shitty. I didn't have a lot of expectations for myself that day.
Yeah.
And then that release of pressure just made me like, go fuck it, let's go. And then you had an amazing day hitting huge numbers.
So then when you debrief after the meet, how do you take that in consideration? Because the meet is just the culmination,
right?
But it's not really the actual output of what the training was. So how do you guys talk that through?
Well, I mean, we just break it down. Like, we're like, okay, so we didn't think the training session went really well. We didn't have a lot of expectations, but it went really well. So what were the things that caused it to go well? Well, I mean, I think it was more mental than anything, because we had a good base going in. I just wasn't hitting those singles like I thought I needed, but then because of that, we took a little bit more rest before the competition, and I was just fresh and ready to go. So some of it is finding that, like we did this at Bench Nationals last weekend, like I had just a crazy ass summer, and my training was kind of, and so I took a little extra time than I normally would have before. And I'm like, well, I mean, it's in the middle of my training for Raw Nationals too. So it's not in like a great spot. I didn't really train up for it. I just figured I'd do whatever I could at that moment. And I ended up feeling great. And I lifted twice. I lifted in the Raw in the morning, and then I lifted in the equipped but Raw in the afternoon. And the first one, it went okay. Like, I was having a hard time kind of getting into it because I didn't have a ton of competition in that one. But when I was in the shirted one, I had to beat the shirted girls. And I felt better than I did the first time around, the second time around, because I was like amped up. I was excited. I had numbers I needed to hit, and I was blowing shit up. And I was like, okay.
So one was a warm-up session for the other one.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I mean, I hit, I think 314.5 on my last Raw one, and it was like a grinder, which it normally is not. And then when I hit my lifts, I only ended up doing 304 because I wanted to guarantee the win. But it felt lighter than any of the lifts previous.
Yeah.
So.
Being pushed helps.
Yeah, absolutely.
It makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Were there any topics that you wanted to discuss that I didn't bring up?
Oh, gosh. I don't think so. I mean, we really kind of hit it all, I think. Looking at Donovan, he's like, oh. I don't know.
Were there any things, because with the Strength Academy podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Were there any topics that, because there's a ton of episodes in there. You said you came in about halfway through or towards?
No, it's only been like, I think they've been on for 5 years, and I've been probably the last year and a half. So
last year and a half, because you have guests and then you also have topics that you go over.
Well, before I went on, they never did guests. It was just them talking nutrition. And so when I came on, I said, well, that's great, but I'm not a nutritionist, and I know a lot of fun people in powerlifting. Let's have some people on. Let's have some guests on, and so we kind of flop it back and forth, where it'll be just Kristen and I talking about whatever topic we choose, and then we'll have guests on, which is always fun.
Are there any things over the past year that either through the guests or through the topics that you guys choose that changed your mind on or made you focus more on certain areas?
Well, having Squat University has been hugely influential in my lifting lately. Actually went down and worked with Dr. Aaron. He's helped me out of a lot of of dark places. But we've also been doing some collaborative stuff on Instagram, and he'll send it to me first before he posts it, and then I'll be like, no, we need to tweak this, or you should probably say this instead of that, or be prepared for these comments.
Yeah.
But that's been a lot of fun. And then we also had Kabuki Strength on. And for me, like, I found him hugely interesting in his life and who he is. And I just like meeting different people and understanding that strength and growth and how we get into the sport can come in all different forms. It doesn't have to be like, this is how you start.
Yeah.
So I think that was pretty fun. And I've learned some things nutrition-wise because Kristen's a nutritionist. And so I kind of had different like myths that have been debunked.
Such as
like, I thought, there's definitely bad carbs and like, why are you eating sugar during your workout? But then she explains like how that helps your recovery and that this gives you this boost and it's not necessarily bad for you, to do these certain things where I thought they were rules like that, you just shouldn't do that. It's bad for you, things like that. So I've actually incorporated a lot more carbs into my diet because, I used to think that would make me fat. So I've learned just kind of fun things like that. And she comes from a USPA background, so it's kind of fun to see. They have a lot of similar views, but their lifting is a little bit different also. So it's kind of nice to blend those two together, I think. They've got a lot of weird stuff going on there over on that side now.
They all do. Like there's nothing. This is what drives me crazy with all this is none of this is new, and it's always been happening when every federation since the start of time.
Yeah.
It's just. It's don't let it bother you. Yeah. Because it doesn't change how you're going to train for the next 12 weeks to the meet you're supposed to go to.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's that simple. Yeah. And then it's crazy because they think it's new.
Yeah.
Like, this is not.
This has been going on
forever. It's like, no, it's not going to be in the Olympics. Like, at what point? Come on.
When are you going to start listening to me?
Yeah.
And it's probably a good thing it's not going into the Olympics. So. Settle down.
Yes.
Settle down.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for coming out. Right. It's been a pleasure being here or speaking to you. And I think I hit everything I had on here. So any final thoughts?
I don't know. I think, kind of culminating everything that we talked about is this is a long journey. And you can make it all different aspects of your life. Like you're not competing anymore, but it's still very much part of who you are and what you do. And you don't necessarily have to be a competitor for that. I love seeing like some of the parents, they're all in and they're part of it. And I hope people look at it and just think that like I can do this forever. Like this can be part of my life forever. And it's a good part of your life full of good people. So, and I think with the social media and stuff, I think there's so many positives, but there's a lot of negatives. So don't be the negative.
Yeah. Well, I think if you keep competing for another 115 meets, you can show people that they can do this well into their 70s.
Everything I post, I try not to just post random. I try to have something in there that's, I think someone might benefit from. Like it has some sort of purpose for somebody, I hope. And I hope just to keep being a good example.
Where is your Instagram the best place to direct people to? Because the link tree is on there.
Yeah, link tree is on there. Instagram. I'm on TikTok. TikTok's a lot different than Instagram. It's kind of funny. I post different things on TikTok than Instagram. It's usually just fun, weird stuff. It's not like, training driven. And this is how people on TikTok, I don't think want that. They just want to see something quick and fun and weird. So I post on there every once in a while, but it's a little bit different. And then a little on Twitter, but on Instagram, really, it's the one I understand the most is Instagram.
Okay. All right. So your Instagram, we'll put the link in the description, but it is What is it?
Jen Thompson.
Jen Thompson, 132.
But I always, people message me, I answer. I mean, for me, like, this is fun. Like, I enjoy doing this. I do the social media because I love it. It's fun. I've made some really good friends on it that I don't even, like, I've never even met, you know? So I always answer my messages and whatever. Just, I try to be available because I enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, you're a great ambassador for the sport. Like I said, thank you for coming out. And guys, we're done. That's my great close.
Good.
Today's episode is brought to you by First Attachment. Are you looking for a supplement brand that truly understands hardworking athletes? Look no further than First Attachment. I have known Justin Harris for pretty close to 2 decades. And if there's anybody that I trust with nutritional and supplement needs, it's Justin Harris. While I love all of their products, I'd suggest that you check out the Field Rations and WTH first. Go to www.firstdetachment.com and use the code TableTalk10 to save 10% off each order. The link is in the description. As I want to call out the limited edition apparel, the link is in the description. As I've spoken about before, the limited edition apparel is apparel that I basically come up with. So some of the designs suck, some of them not so much. It's a weird thing. The ones that I think are going to do really well usually don't. The ones that I think aren't going to do really well do really well. Either way, they're all limited runs, so it changes, you know, every single month. But all limited edition items are tri-blend material with, you know, the cut that everybody wants now that's a little bit tighter on their arms so they can show off how big their fucking arms are. The limited edition items directly support the podcast. So head over, pick up your shirt today. Could be a hoodie, could be shorts. We got these ball hugger shorts right now, which I would never wear, but I was told they were super popular. But you know what? They were wrong because they're still sitting there and I probably should discount them right now. Anyhow, if you want to see the discount on the ball hugger shorts, head over to the limited edition apparel, link in the description box.